Every year our Christmas tree gets smaller and smaller.
Every year we get older and older.
And older, I know.
We're not spending all that energy to put that giant tree up. But I think I've got a little dove I was going to put on the top.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it needs some kind of decoration. You can't just go.
Yeah, it does.
And if you notice, we have our mitten tree started.
Oh, okay.
And I think we're going to have to stay with mitten tree because the mitten tree with underwear hanging on it would just be too strange.
Those need to be turned in then today, don't they?
I don't know what
They
they do.
said the 17th.
17th?
Yeah.
That would be today. Where do they go?
Fish.
I can take them today after church.
Well,
They're not open though. I guess you just put them in
tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, because they just put them in the box where you put the food.
Yeah.
I'll take them tomorrow. Stick them in the box.
I left a bag there.
Okay.
Looks like it's blossoming.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it, with the kids' mittens? The last gong. All right, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this atypical, well, I guess typical for a global warming season, raining and like 50 degrees out in the end of December. It just doesn't feel right. I brought my sleigh back from Indiana and it's all parked and ready to go, and all we're getting is rain. So, any announcements? Yes.
The El Dorado Church will have Christmas Eve service, carols and candlelight, next Sunday at 4 o'clock. So you're welcome to show up at 4 o'clock for Christmas carols and candlelight.
Yeah, Christmas carols. If you like to sing, that's the place to go. We'll have church here in the morning, regular service, and then I'll probably do a Christmas Eve service at like 10, just because I like to see the candles in the windows and, you know, the lights lit and that kind of stuff. You're more than welcome to come, but nobody has to. I'll have some canned music, and it'll be just a little short thing. So, but just something to make sure that the church is occupied. And then Dereck's going to be here again the 31st. They're not having church at El Dorado, so we'll have a good presentation on the 31st for New Year's Eve. Any other announcements? Okay, we're doing the candles because that's kind of a historical thing, that the Advent candles is something that most of you, if you grew up in a Christian church, you kind of had that. We're not making a big deal out of it. And I'm kind of explaining a little bit because it's hope, joy, and peace. And then we turned them around. It's actually hope, peace, and joy. But because I gave a little presentation on hope the first Sunday of Advent, and then Crystal was here last Sunday and gave a speech, or gave a presentation on joy, we did the joy candle for that Sunday. So this Sunday will be the peace candle, if they manage to stay straight up. All right, prelude, please.
I'm going to play What Child Is This?
What child is this?
gets us in the Christmas spirit. And you may have heard that UUs are not Christian-oriented. We are oriented toward any faith that anyone has that they want to share. And since most of us have a Christian background, we're going to be pretty heavily Christian as we go along. Our welcome is 621 in the back of your hymnals. Why not a star? They told me that when Jesus was born, a star appeared in the heavens above the place where the young child lay.
When I was very young, I had no trouble believing wondrous things. I believed in the star.
It was a wonderful miracle, part of a long ago story foretelling an uncommon life.
They told me a supernova appeared in the heavens in its dying burst of fire.
When I was older and believed in science and reason, I believed the story of the star explained.
But I found I was unwilling to give up the star, fitting symbol for the birth of one whose uncommon life has been long remembered. The star explained became the star understood for Jesus, for Buddha, for Zarathustra. Why not a star? Some bright star shines somewhere in the heavens each time a child is born.
Who knows what it may foretell?
Who knows what uncommon life may yet again unfold, if we but give it a chance.
Margaret Gooding, very nice. All right, our chalice lighting, along with the Advent candles. Fellow sojourners, we gather together on this Christmas Eve as fellow sojourners looking for light, for hope, for peace, and for love. We gather as people from many backgrounds, many faiths, many cultures, and many spiritual paths. But as we light this chalice, we gather as one body looking to the Nativity for its message to all humanity. Its message is there is light, there is hope, there is peace, there is love. Our opening hymn is number 75.
Playing right there.
This is probably a new one for all of us.
We okay now? Here we go.
Thank
It is a mystic poem from John Greenleaf Whittier,
John Greenleaf Whittier.
the great
all right.
Quaker poet.
Excellent. Which is why it has such rhythm. All right, our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. Our faith in each other is its sacrament. Working for justice and living with compassion is its prayer. Reverently we covenant together to side with love, to heal and not to harm, and to share hope with each other and the world. This is a little bit different than the original one. We'll kind of switch back and forth as we go along. I know Crystal likes the original one, and I kind of like this one a little bit, so we'll move back and forth between each. Joys and concerns. We always have to start with the Ukraine. It's kind of in the back burner of the news. Basically a stalemate, and our conservative Congress is withholding any support. And if you've noticed in international news, Hungary has voted against, out of the 27 nations in the EU, European Union, Hungary has voted. And of course, Hungary is fairly closely aligned with Soviet Russia and with President Trump, because it is a, let's say, how do I phrase this and be polite? A stern-leaning government that believes in the power of the state, and whatever the state wants to do is the right thing to do, which tends to be the following of that order. So the question is, what happens to Ukraine with no support from the EU and no support from the United States? Things are going to get pretty dicey there pretty quick. The Ukrainians are still fighting, and they're still holding the faith, and they are still working to do the best they can. So, one for the Ukraine, one for Israel, Palestine. No matter which side you fall on, tragedy abounds. I'm sure you just saw the news that the three prisoners, the three captives, were killed by the Israeli army. They had a white flag and were trying to surrender, which tells you the brutality that goes on in war, in any war, by any army. And they were shot, and not only were two of them killed immediately, one of them ran for cover and yelled for help in Hebrew and was shot anyway. So we don't know exactly what was going through the minds of those troops, but to have hostages killed by their own rescuers is a tragedy on a tragedy on a tragedy. All right. Anything else?
A small concern, but more of a joy. My dad phoned me to let me know that he is, this week before Christmas, heading up to the northern peninsula of Michigan to see my great-uncle Harry. Harry is turning 90 years old. He is the last surviving sibling of my grandfather, Charles. Glad that my dad's going to be able to see his Uncle Harry, who is not seen in a number of years. And Dad's pretty accustomed to driving long distances in his truck. I'm just going to be holding him in my heart as he's driving all the way into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
And I'm not sure what the weather is up there now. I think
it gets snowier the further you go.
Yes. So a 90-year-old Youper, you can't beat that. So, and we keep Mackinac Island. I look at the live camera, the camera on the hotel every once in a while, just to see what the activity is up there. And it's pretty slow. Still have the horse-drawn wagons delivered, but not surprisingly, I guess, the people who live on Mackinac all winter long are allowed to ride snowmobiles in the winter. So there's snowmobiles whizzing up and down the roads everywhere. All right. Anything else? We have to keep the state legislature, Ohio State Legislature, in our prayers. They just passed a rule and passed it on to Governor DeWine. Anti-LGBTQ trans kids will not be allowed to play sports other than their regular designated birthright. They've outlawed any kind of trans care, in other words, medical care for trans kids who want to do the transition. That has been outlawed. It's still a question of whether DeWine will sign it or not. I can't imagine that he wouldn't, but maybe he'll surprise us. If you remember the massacre in the Oregon district with the shooting, when Governor DeWine appeared with the mayor the next day or 2 days later and said he was going to work hard for gun control, and then that totally evaporated. So we'll see if he has a backbone this time. Anything else? All right, we'll light a candle for those hopes, dreams, desires, those fears that we hold close to our heart and not able to share. Some of those things that maybe we should mention here in public and didn't get mentioned, we want to raise those up as well. All right, children's story. Oh, we're doing, Dereck is here this Sunday, and we're doing on the gift of imagination. So I put in peace because this is our peace candle. So imagination, imagine peace. And then I've got another one with the candle, peace on earth and goodwill to men, and our little story. We'll see if this plays.
I'm Coach Jim Quick, so I want to introduce a brand new thinking tool, but it's not brand new to you because you do it all the time, but a lot of times we're not using it consciously. So I want to put some labels to it so you can use it to enhance, again, your thinking and your results. And this is the power of your imagination. Imagination, right? Einstein said imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Because knowledge is what is, but imagination is what can be. And we think in words, but you also think in pictures. If I ask you to think about your car or think about your bedroom, you see things, right? You see your car, you see 4 tires, you see a sunroof, you see the color blue, but you don't see the words sunroof, 4 tires, and blue, right? When you're thinking about how you dream in what? In images, in pictures. You don't see closed caption text on the bottom of the mental movie in your mind when you're dreaming, right? So you think in pictures and images. In fact, a picture is worth what? 1,000 words. So that's a lot of powerful ways to think. And even with your memory, a lot of people tend to be better at remembering what they see rather than what they hear, right? You go to somebody and you say, I remember your face, but I forgot your name. You never go to somebody and say the opposite. You never go to someone and say, I remember your name, but I forgot your face. There's a Chinese proverb that goes, what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand. What I hear, I forget. I heard the name, I forgot the name. What I see, I remember. I saw your face. I remember your face. And what you do, going back to practice and exercise, that knowledge is not power, knowledge times action equals power, that's when you truly understand. So imagery is a wonderful addition to add to our thinking, not just using words and language and questions, but thinking in pictures. Now, how do you apply this towards better thinking and a better life? Well, here's one way. Did you know that your mind can't tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that's real? And I'll say that again because this is a very important point. Your mind cannot tell the difference between something that you vividly imagine and something that's real. Let's go back to your dreams. Have you ever woken up from a dream that was so real, the images were so real that you were shaking, or that you were perspiring, or your heart was beating out of your chest? Because your mind can't tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something that's real. A lot of people use this for the reverse. They will imagine a result that they're fearful of, like maybe it is public speaking, and they're nervous about that talk they have to do, and they're imagining it, and they're imagining like them messing up. And whatever you're imagining on a regular basis, you're getting good at. Let me give you an example. At the University of Chicago, they took average people and broke them up into 3 groups, A, B, and C. And they had them do free throws to see how well they did. And then when they were done, they went to group A and said, I want you to practice an hour a day over the next 30 days. Group B, we want you to not practice at all. Don't touch a basketball for the next 30 days. Group C, we want you to practice for an hour a day, but do not go on the court, do not touch a basketball. We want you to practice in your mind. We want you to practice imagining successfully throwing free throws for an hour a day. They followed up with these 3 groups 30 days later. Group A, who practiced each day for 1 hour, improved 24% because practice makes what? Progress, right? Group B, they took and they put them back on the court to see how well they did. Exactly the same. No practice, no progress. But Group C is what blew their mind. Group C, who never touched the ball, never went on the court, who just practiced successfully in their mind for an hour a day, improved 23%. Just 1% less than the group that did the physical activity. That's the power of your mind.
The power of imagination. All right, now we'll hear Dereck's thought on imagination. And that goes on for another 5 or 10 minutes. If you're interested in learning a little more about it, I'll give you the website.
Glad to be in ministry with you again this Sunday, and I'll be back, just 2 Sundays from now. That'll be wonderful. I do miss y'all when I'm not here. The reading I brought for this morning comes from a mystical Jewish text called the Zohar. And I'll read to you the passage known as Genesis 86a. When Abraham saw the sun rising in the morning from the east, he was first moved to think that it was God. And he said, "This is the King who created me." And he worshipped it the whole day long. In the evening, when the sun went down and the moon commenced to shine, he said, "Oh, verily, this rules over the orb I worship the whole day long, since the latter is now darkened and does not shine anymore." So he served the moon all night long. In the morning, when he saw the darkness depart and the east grow light, he said, "Well, surely there is another who rules over both these orbs and gives them both order." So there was a point when I was a little kid that my mom went back to work after my little brother was old enough to go to kindergarten. And so after school, we both were required to go home. Go to the home of a woman my mom paid to watch over us. She wasn't a bad person, but she wasn't the wonderful kind of person you would really want watching over children. I'll speak for myself and not for my brother, but there were many rules in her home that I found completely dreadful. We were never to play with her children's toys and never to play with their Atari video game console, which is somewhat understandable. They were their toys and not ours, but we always saw them playing with the stuff. And all we could do was stand there or sit there and watch with longing. We were also not allowed to watch more than 30 minutes of TV. Fine. But if we went outside to play, we were never, ever allowed to set foot on the grass. The entire lawn was forbidden territory. We could play in the driveway if nobody had parked a car there, and we could play on the sidewalk. To a little boy like me, it was the most boring place on the entire planet. Sheer torture for me, since I was there Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. until 5:30 when Mom picked up my brother and me from her house. Now, we were, however, allowed to play with a few cast-off odds and ends. I remember a box of old wooden building blocks. The kind that were painted red or yellow or blue. They were all fading because they were likely decades older than me. For all I know, they possibly could have been as old as my mother. But I used my imagination to transform those blocks. I made them into spaceships and dinosaurs and cities on the moon. I even made what I know now were probably very annoying sound effects. Lasers that went pew pew. If you've been around little kids doing that. The vroom of a rocket engine. And dinosaurs roaring. My block dinosaurs roaring. My caretaker would scold me. You need to get rid of that imagination. She would also take that same tone and lecture me. You are never going into outer space. Nobody is ever going to live on the moon. Who cares about dinosaurs? They probably didn't even really exist. Did I mention that she was a very conservative Catholic? I shouldn't blame any of this on her Catholicism, except for maybe a little bit of the anti-dinosaur bit, but truth be told, that had more to do with her mindset than her Catholicism, given that official Catholic doctrine does accept the reality of evolution and that dinosaurs have existed. But she heaped scorn on my imagination. Day after day, week after week, month after month. Can't you be normal, she told me. You need to be normal if you want other kids not to pick on you. And she said it in a tone that led me to believe that she felt I should be picked on. All because I was trying to imagine a world that was at least more interesting than the house I was confined to between the end of school and my mom picking me up. I once complained about my caregiver to my mom, but Mom was desperate for childcare. And so my brother and I kept going back year after year until I entered 6th grade and was considered big enough to watch both of us after school. But that scorn for the imagination, I've seen it since that time. I've seen it again and again. There is a certain stripe of person with a certain mindset that dislikes anyone who shows imagination. To them, imagination is not far removed from childishness and imaginary friends. They call it pointless fantasy. They call it a waste of time. But in this holiday season, I want you to know that imagination is a gift. A gift that, if it is nurtured, can be one of the most amazing inner gifts dwelling inside of you. This morning's reading from the Zohar is silly on its face value. I mean, it's silly. What grown man sees the sun rising, calls it God, then sees the moon at night, and then calls that God? It's not a story to take literally. It is an act of imagination. And this story is only silly if you sit around at the surface. Deeper down, it is filled with possibility. Abraham is a character in this story asking people to imagine something bigger than themselves, perhaps to imagine the most vast thing of all, the power that rules over sun and moon, day and night, the power that some have named God, but certainly a vast and cosmic power, so much greater than ourselves. And where would we be in the holiday season without other acts of imagination that call to us? Among our Jewish neighbors, Hanukkah lamps that burn for 8 nights, despite having only 1 day's worth of oil. A light of justice and religious freedom in the face of violence and oppression. And what about angels speaking in the night? Human bodies with impossible wings sprouting out of their back. Your former minister, Wells Beatty, once called them fairies for grown-ups. But those voices, those angel voices, they sing peace on earth, goodwill to all. Can't we imagine that too? Shouldn't we imagine that too? And on the night of winter solstice, which is coming soon, can't we also imagine the moving wheel of the seasons? And that springtime which seems so far away, at this time when we are in winter darkness, and the sun sets so early and rises so late. And then there is a newborn child in a manger. Can we imagine that too? That in utter poverty, with no claim to privilege, a child would be born to humiliated parents, and such a child would change the entire world for the better, century after century after century. Can't we imagine that too? Shouldn't we imagine that too? Especially when we think of other children who have so little, living in places ranging from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe to Gaza to the Pine Ridge Reservation of the Lakota Sioux. Can't we imagine? Shouldn't we imagine children who are still going to change the world? And I know sometimes, yes, sometimes imaginations can be vain. And sometimes imagination can be fearful and lead people astray. But I would rather that humanity have mistakes of imagination than have no imagination at all. We would be so poor in spirit without our imagination. Because human imagination, it at its very best, when it is at its best within us and among us, it is a faith in things yet unseen. A faith in things that should one day come to pass, even if we never build cities on the moon. We can ponder in our hearts, what if we could? What if we could? And in a world where warfare rages, in places like Ukraine and Gaza, we can still imagine a peace that is also just. And in a nation where children still go to bed hungry, we can still imagine a world where they are fed, and perhaps even ponder how to bring that future to pass. And when Christmas comes, we can still imagine peace on earth, goodwill to all, and even ponder what our part of that may need to be. Can't we imagine? Shouldn't we imagine? Christmas is coming soon. May every person in the world be blessed. This is one of those rare churches where we get to share the message together, to be in dialogue. in this little chapter of the holiday season where we contemplate the gift of imagination as we journey our way to Christmas and into the new year. What ponderings or questions do you have to share with each other this morning?
Trying to find a way to control imagination, because as you talked about imagination in the little children's story, and as I mentioned earlier about Palestine, I'm trying very hard not to imagine almost 20,000 deaths in Palestine, and 3/4 of them are children. So 18,000 kids have been killed in Israeli bombing. I really do not want to imagine that.
There are many hard realities in the world that, even though we don't witness them firsthand, they are left to our imagination. It is hard to imagine those things. But to shake hands with it and to make sure that we're accurate. We want to make sure that what we're imagining matches fact. And the figures you've given, I think, are reliable. It is part of what prevents us from becoming hard-hearted. I worry the most about the people who can never imagine the suffering or the struggles of others. Because those are people with very, very hard hearts.
There's a quote that is one of my favorite quotes, and for the life of me, I can't remember who said it. But it's, those who seek beauty will always find it. And I love that. And I'm trying to live that. So, like, you know, what Tim was talking about, I get so overwhelmed with all of this negativity. And the other day, I've been really jonesing for those peppermint Frosties from Wendy's. They only come about once a year. And it seems like whenever I go to one, they're all out of peppermint. So I pull into a drive-in window on my way home from something at Wendy's, and I ordered the little junior size for little kids. And I pull up to the window, and the guy hands it to me, and he says, "Is that all?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, you can just have that." So he didn't charge me the $1.29 for it. He didn't have to do that.
No.
You know, and it was this big, tough black guy that I never would have expected to, you know, be such a sweetheart. So, in the midst of all that stuff, there'll be a little incident like that. And I'm trying to find those little incidents, and there's actually a lot of them out there. That you just gotta hang on to something.
Yeah, I'm mindful as you're saying this. I always try to keep in mind, I mean, there's that song, you know, it's the most wonderful time, you know, of the year. But I know for some people it's not.
No.
Because either their family lives very far away and they don't get to see them, or there's somebody around the table who is gone. I'm aware, like, this Christmas will be my mother-in-law's first Christmas without her husband. And they were married for 57 years. And yet, if we can keep our eyes open for those glimpses of beauty, the person who gives you a Frosty, not because he had to, he just wanted to. Like,
Yeah,
for the
I
sheer...
had my dollar ready to give it to him, and
I'm picturing the sheer joy of it. Yeah, keep looking.
One very powerful form of imagination, which is also a form of meditation, is to imagine something and just think of that alone. I have OCD, and when I was in Europe, there would be times when I just couldn't get out of my mind something that I was obsessing about. And I finally figured out on my own without anybody telling me, I would imagine a rose and just think about that. And that really helped. And I still use that technique today. Years ago, I found out that that is a form of meditation.
Actually, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it shows up both in Catholic and Buddhist mystical traditions around. It's called a mystic rose. That's why some churches even have rose windows. It looks like an abstract floral pattern around a center. That kind of contemplation of beauty unfolding. There's a whole meditative tradition, and it crosses cultures too.
Well, a lot of people have trouble with their mind spinning when they go to bed. They can't keep their mind from running through the events of the day, and that happens every night. My wife has trouble with that, and she doesn't have any luck with any kind of meditation, but I always recommend when people tell me they have that problem, this form of meditation, because sometimes instead of obsessing about something of an OCD nature when I go to bed, my mind is spinning. So I've learned also to, and now I use a dandelion rather than a rose, but it's the same concept. You don't have to use a flower, you can use a bird or a rock or a tractor. It doesn't matter. You just focus on that one thing. And that's a form of, I never really thought about it until your sermon today, but I would have to say that's a form of imagination. And it is a very effective form of meditation. And none of the other methods work, like focusing on your breath, for example. I never could use that. This is another option that might help somebody.
I often will tell people, like, try different spiritual practices. There's no one that works for everybody.
Right.
So, I think, Mike, did you have your hand up?
I'm just thinking about imagination in the world of diplomacy. If we think of the challenging strife we have in this world today, what is it that, aside from skill and a tremendous amount of knowledge, do diplomats have in settling things that seem to be insurmountable? And perhaps it's imagination in some respects. Maybe that's what keeps them going. We'll have to maybe check that out with Roberta or Jeff to see what is it that keeps them going when they go back to the table. Is it imagining, as we stated, a better world, less strife, that the 3 hostages killed didn't happen, but actually they emerged smiling faces as others did? What is it that keeps them going?
Or imagining the possibility of how to get from here to peace, how to get from here to the captives being home, how to get from here to an end to the bombings. I hadn't thought about that as an act of imagination. And I think a pretty sacred one as well for those who have that gift.
there was, right now I'm reading a biography of Beethoven, one of the many that I've read, but I picked this one up at the book fair recently. And this author was writing this about 1927, It was published in '29. So, you know, there's a little different perspective on what's popular music, where music should be. And he's really stressing the fact of how Beethoven latched onto his imagination and avoided programmatic music, like music that tells a story. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to have music be just his imaginative creation. And being an artist and music myself, I'm so totally into that. I mean, and you can use your imagination as therapy to help cope with the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, on a really bad day or when my own demon is flaring up and I just can't control it, if I get out my sketch pad or get out my piccolo and start getting into those areas of imagination, it can really, really help. So I agree with you 100% when you say, should we? Absolutely, yes. And I can thank my parents for that because, you know, like you said, this authority figure was discouraging that. And I have very specific memories of being a really little kid, and even before my brother was born, and me and my sister would say, do you want to play make-believe? Yeah. And then we'd just decide what we were going to make believe, and then do it, you know? But I remember asking her that question, do you want to play make-believe? And I remember seeing my mom laughing one day at that question, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that was mimicking. It was the laughter of all-embracing joy. I couldn't have defined it that way at the time, but now looking back, I see it that way. So, yay, you know, and really encourage that in young people, their imagination, and use it for your own therapy.
Nurture that inner gift your whole life.
Absolutely.
Dereck not only gives us something to think about every time he's here, he gives us something new to think about, a new way to think about it. Most enjoyable. All right. Our offering, as usual, if you have something to spare, please do so at this Christmas season. And if you need something, let us know and we will try to help out. What are we hearing?
Oh, you'll know when you hear it.
Okay. Closing hymn is 244. It came upon a midnight clear.
In a black song. It's a joke, it's a joke.
maybe, I don't know whether you did it or not, I remember, and this wasn't too long ago, caroling when the people from the church lived close to the church, and you had shut-ins that lived close to the church. Pleasant Hill for the Church of the Brethren, every Christmas we would go out and carol, members of the choir, and then those of us who couldn't sing but just kind of filled in, tagged along, and it was fun. It was really fun to go through Christmas and see people come to the door. All right, extinguishing the chalice is 683 in the back of your hymn. be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual, works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. And our postlude. All right, that closes our service at New Madison. Let me say, as if we extinguish the candles for joys and concerns, we do not extinguish our imagining those lives that we are touching and that we hope to touch. Those little lights stay lit all through the week until we light them again. So for the Yoopers and traveling in northern Michigan, may the snow part with ease. Our last picture is the horse parade in Greenville, always a treat every year. If you've never been there, I would encourage you to go sometime. It's always I think it's the third week in November, or the second week. But it's a great time on Broadway. The horses are lit, the wagons are lit, and about half the ongoers or half the observers are lit. Have a good week. There's donuts and candy back there.
No, I still there.
Well, they're a half hour earlier.
Yeah, we're just glad you're here.
You made it time for the service. That's it. Yeah, they're half hour.